together a panel of people that you can ask questions of what this year is going to look like. So we have Nancy Tingy, the president of Canyons Board of Education, Rick Robbins, the superintendent, BJ Weller, who is the director of responsive services, Susan Edwards, public engagement coordinator, Jeff Haney, the director of communications. We didn't talk about it, but how are we going? Do you want me to take the questions? How? I guess I'll let Dr. Rick Robbins start.
Yeah.
Dustin, 1, 2, 3. Testing, testing.
Hello, everyone. Is that one working? No.
Testing. Oh, mine works.
There we go.
BJ.
Testing, testing.
Hello.
Super cool is really important.
So the point of the panel is really to just answer your questions. You've heard kind of an overview or a synopsis from the superintendent what this year looks like. But we just want to make sure you guys are the parent leaders out in the school, and you, a lot of people, you're influencers to a lot of people, to not just your boards and other parents, but a lot of people ask you questions. And so you are always, as Dr. Robbins said, always welcome to contact him, contact me with questions. Every parent in the district knows to contact communications with any question they have. We get back as quick as we can. I will tell you right now we are fighting a lot of questions, and so we're getting back as quick as we possibly can. But we just wanted to be able to answer your questions and to hear from you today what your thoughts are, what your concerns are, what we can help you think through. I know some of the questions that have come in already have been about what will PTA look like this year in the schools and how you can best serve. So we wanted to be able to talk to you a little bit about that. So first thing I would say was we kind of polled the principals, or I should say the principals polled some of you, PTA presidents, and got some input back. Part of that was how best can we serve. So you probably all know that for the first couple of weeks, the schools have sort of asked for a grace period before volunteers really come back into schools. They want to get the kids back to school. They want to get some routines established and all the hygiene things in place and build a relationship before things start moving. So there may be a couple, 3 weeks in there where it feels a little different, right? Where you're not doing all the back to school things and all the welcoming things. But there's certainly a place for all of you and for PTA in the schools. A couple of our principals have asked for some help with some things from volunteers, and I know that, so there may be some individual cases, but really on the whole try to give that little grace period for the first couple of weeks. But we also know that you have jobs to do, that you have to get your membership, you have to get your PTA up and running, you have to figure out what everything looks like differently for your board this year. And so anything we can do to help answer that or to just answer your questions as a parent, we're yours for the time being as long as you've got questions. So if anybody will start.
Hello. Do you want a microphone?
No, it's okay.
Okay.
I'll pretend. I'm Dr. Bradley, and I'm the Little Canyons PTA president. First of all, I want to thank you all who brought on work for all your hard work. I know this is a difficult time, and truly, everyone in our community appreciates all those countless hours of planning and then planning again that has gone into this. I do have a question. People have been asking, what happens if there is a COVID outbreak at school? Obviously, there's differences between high schools, middle schools, and
So I'm going to have BJ address this, but I first want to address part of that I think is really a hot button issue. And if you're aware, the governor and the state health department released last week in a modified plan this idea of modified quarantine, which essentially would mean that if a student had a close contact exposure, meaning that a student is within 6 feet, more than 15 minutes with another student that tests positive, then if they're asymptomatic, they would be allowed to return to school the very next day. I openly oppose that, and I've made that. I know that has caused a lot of uncertainty. My understanding is that the new plan is going to be modified to another new plan here soon. But I'm not an epidemiologist, but speaking with Dr. Webb and just doing my own research and understanding this issue is that my recommendation is that if a student is in close contact with another student that is positive, that there is a mandatory quarantine and that student stay home. Now, the amount of time, that really is, I leave that up to the health department and Sally Goodyear, our lead nurse, along with BJ and our student services to really make that determination. But I have stated that publicly, and I just want you all to know that's my current position. So BJ, do you want to kind of talk through the protocol and what happens?
Yeah, so, is this working? Can you hear me okay?
Like that.
So, we've learned a lot from the beginning until now, and I know that we'll continue to learn more about COVID as scientists learn more about it. What the epidemiologists have been explaining to us is that the primary way to expose somebody else is through droplets from the mouth, right? And so I am grateful that as we have learned more, we are now requiring the face coverings for every individual, except for those who have been approved for an exemption through the IEP process, through a 504 accommodation. The cloth face covering or the face shield have been approved, and so for most individuals that would be sufficient. The definition of close contact exposure has also been modified for our district, and where originally they said because we are requiring the face covering, if you are within the 6 feet for more than 15 minutes, you would not be considered a close contact exposure. They have since removed the face covering part of that definition. So anybody that's within the 6 feet for more than 15 minutes would be considered a close contact exposure. And those individuals would be notified by either the health department or our school nurse of that exposure and then be required to quarantine. Our understanding is that the modified quarantine option is going to be removed. I don't know if that is for students only, for everybody, but as soon as we get those new guidelines, I'm sorry, my face covering keeps falling. As soon as we get those new guidelines, we will immediately share those with the public so that you're aware. Chances are that you'll be made aware of those guidelines at the same time we are. When those guidelines were released last Thursday from the State Health Department, around 10 o'clock, I was in the middle of a training, and within an hour I probably had 50 emails from principals and parents asking questions about, so what does this mean for us? And I honestly hadn't read them yet because I got them the same time as everybody else. But in the event that there is an exposure, again, those individuals who were in direct or close contact with that individual will be notified. At this time, there would not be a broadcast that there was a positive case. The epidemiologists state that the secondary exposure, the further away you are, again, because of the droplets, there would be no need, and it would probably just instill more fear than anything when there is not a risk to that individual. If we have multiple positive cases in a classroom, right now they're telling us 3 cases in a classroom within 2 weeks would be considered an outbreak. The Council for State and Territory Epidemiologists have stated that they will relook at what that outbreak definition is and include those in the new guidelines we receive, hopefully by the end of this week. It would be 15 positive cases within a school that's considered an outbreak. And then within a district, the decision would be made between our school board members, the health department, based on the whatever's happening in the district. If it's isolated to one school, chances are it would be just that school that is closed for the 2 weeks on quarantine. If it's multiple schools, it would be a different conversation. But either way, every decision we make is in collaboration with the local health department and our school board members, because we know every little area is different based on how COVID is impacting those neighborhoods.
Question. If it is going to be for a period of 2 weeks, are you going to transfer those students to the online program, or is it, because I know you mentioned that it's very important to keep learning.
Yep,
is
so-
there something with a 3 plan that you can just easily say, this particular school or grade is being shut down for 2 weeks, everyone is moving on?
Right, we'll need to be prepared to continue providing educational services during the quarantine.
So one of the aspects to that is that we've really been working to lift up as a district our skill set with Canvas as a learning management system. And what I'm working with our administrative team through our principals and our teachers is to really build that capacity so that in the event that there is a class closure or a school closure, that we can make that seamless transition to online and potentially back. So yeah, that would be the plan. I would add to just another data set to really keep close eye on as we are is community spread. And if you go to the Salt Lake County website COVID dashboard, there's great information there. You can drill that down by local zip code, and you can look at those community spread numbers, because we know that those percentages, those positivity rates have an impact on our schools, right? If there's a certain rate in the community, then that potentially has influence. Currently, as a district, we're sitting at about 6.8 to 7%, and that's since early March. So that's taking into account the rise and fall of number of tests, right, that have occurred, which is a pretty solid number. In the last month, we're just at about 7% positivity rate. And there are 2 communities, Midvale and 1 zip code in Sandy, that are right at 10%. Surgeon General last week came out and recommended a 10% positivity threshold for reopening schools. Dr. Redfield from CDC has recommended 5%. And so I feel good about, our current position in that. But I think it's important that, as a community, as parents, that we monitor that data closely. As you know, the trend data in Salt Lake County has been very, very positive. And I think that's a lot can be attributed to the mask mandate, and those numbers are continuing to decline. But we'll continue to watch those close. We had a question over here.
Hi, I'm Bridget. I'm the Apollo Elementary
Hey, Bridget.
President. We've had a lot of questions along the same lines with COVID. If there's an outbreak, I have a 4th grader. I also have a 6th grader, 2 different schools. So if my son is exposed in 4th grade, does that mean that my daughter also stays home in junior high? That also, and these are questions that have come up. I'm sure you've thought on this.
Great questions.
The same
Absolutely.
thing is if your child is exposed to a person on the bus, does the whole bus get quarantined, and does that also mean the siblings and the parents get quarantined?
That's a great question. So those who are required to quarantine are those who've been primarily exposed to somebody. So if you are not the direct person that was in contact with somebody who tested positive, you're considered a secondary exposure, and you do not need to quarantine. Now, if you live with somebody who tests positive, then your whole household is required to quarantine. If that modified quarantine were still in effect, that is not an option if you live with somebody who tests positive. You're not allowed because there's more contact when you live with somebody. If you're on the bus, again, it would not be the whole bus that is required to quarantine. Only those individuals who have been identified as in close contact. It's really important for our bus drivers, our teachers, counselors, social workers, whoever are meeting with students, to make sure that they have these seating charts in the cafeteria so that we can identify where students have been, who they've been sitting next to, if they've been within that 6 feet especially for more than 15 minutes, because again, those individuals would be required to quarantine. And the good news right now for elementary age students is that they have the lowest rate of infection than any other age group. They anticipate that if there are other outbreaks, chances are it'll be in secondary schools. But as much as possible, because we're wearing the masks, because we're trying to physical distance, because we have about a third of our students doing online where we can reduce the numbers in classrooms, our health department feels really good about the plan for Canyon School District, and also considering the rates within the 4 cities within our district. When you disaggregate that from the whole county data, right, they said that we're in a really good place with our plan to reopen.
So you had mentioned, sorry, I'm in Pathfind Elementary. Okay,
Hi, welcome.
You had mentioned we have about a third of the students that have registered for online only. I talked with our principal and we're at about 80% of in-person enrollment in our elementary school. Of the 15%, there's 15% that haven't
Sure.
chosen. But is that what our numbers are at, about a third of all?
It's like 70% and 30%.
It's hovered back and forth.
Yeah, it's kinda-
We've been as high as 80% in person. I actually think the modified quarantine piece that came out had tremendous influence on parents' decisions. And so I think that, that's important that you share that out, that, my understanding is that's changing. But I am not in support of a modified quarantine. So, hopefully that can help. But yeah, it's kind of fluctuated. I believe we're up to district-wide, the last I checked, within the last couple of days, we're very, very close to 30,000 completed registrations. So we still have about 5,000 registrations to complete. And I totally, also, just so you're aware, I'm very supportive of allowing that flexibility and time for parents to also watch this unfold. Some districts have set a hard line. Obviously, for us, for staffing purposes, it would be better to cut that off, that enrollment registration date. But I know, everybody's stress level is high and they want to be able to continue to watch the numbers and just kind of see how this unfolds. So we will do our best to project that number. But the last I looked at, we were like 70, somewhere in the 70s and close to 30%. We do have some parents too that are opting for the parent-guided option, which I think is terrific, and just one more element of flexibility for parents. So great questions.
Here in the back.
My name is Susan. I am the secondary council president this year. And my question is about how are the schools being notified of positive cases? Are the parents required, are they self-reporting? Is the health department going to report to the school if there's a positive test? As far as symptoms in classrooms, if teachers are witnessing symptoms, are they reporting them somehow? What does that look like?
Yeah, so anybody that tests positive for COVID-19, it doesn't matter where you get the test done. It'll be reported to the health department. They will then notify Sally Goodger, our lead nurse. She's the point of contact with the health department. And then we will then work with each individual school. And that's whether it's a student or a parent, or not a parent, excuse me, a student or a faculty member, staff member of those positive cases.
If a parent tests positive, and maybe the child doesn't get tested, and then one family does, and then one member does, and they assume that everybody does, or if the health department is still doing contact tracing, and they'll say,
So that's a great question. I'll get clarification from the health department. The health department says that they are not doing the contact tracing for individuals when they test positive right now. That's not every county health department in the state, but currently Salt Lake, because of the numbers, they said they don't have that capacity to do that amount of contact tracing. So that's why they're relying on our school nurses to help them in that situation. I know that we would be notified if a student tested positive or one of our staff members. I'm not sure that they were going to notify us if the student lived with somebody, but I'll find out.
One thing, Brooke, along those same lines that just comes to my mind, and you guys can all jump in on this, and this is always, this isn't just in this case, but as PTA presidents, frequently you all are privy to or stumble across or happen to be around sensitive information that is confidential, quite honestly, for students, for other parents, for families. In this case, we have HIPAA and FERPA laws as well. So one of the things we're really concerned about is shaming anybody, or especially students. BJ, you can talk more about that. But we want to make sure that you are very cautious and you encourage other parents that are very cautious to respect people's rights and to not do anything that would draw attention to. And I'm not, we will absolutely share the information as needed through health department, through our nurse, that needs to be shared with families and with people in exposure. But just don't let it be gossip. Make sure that we're being first caring for all students. And that goes with anything, any knowledge that you have or see because you're in the schools a lot. Just as always, use your discretion to not spread things that are not personal or that are personal and not your, that goes for anything, grades, for how kids are doing in school, for, whatever, but in particular with this year. BJ, I don't know if you want to.
Well, I want to add to that, Susan. Thank you so much for bringing that up. We will do our best to communicate with you on any major incident that happens within the district. But please understand that in matters of public health, we take our cues from the health department, and that includes communication with the public about matters of public health. We want to be as transparent as possible and communicate with you as much as possible, but there also are, as Susan noted, a lot of rules and regulations regarding to privacy on what we can release. Now, we work with BJ's department hand in glove on what we can and cannot say, and the health department guides us on that, as in any other communicable disease. So we will do our best to stay on top of communicating the best we can with the information that will help you as parents. And we've tried to create learning options for you and create a system where your child can move seamlessly between the formats if you as a parent decide to do what's best for your family, given the information that we can provide to you, given all of the laws that we're faced with privacy.
Thank you, Jeff. If you grew up like me, and there was, always those shaming games in elementary and middle school, like cooties and whatnot, right? Like, don't touch this person, the yellow touch, cheese touch. There is really great concern, and there already have been cases where individuals who have been tested positive, even though that they're no longer positive, have been, kind of outcast, like shamed, like don't go near that person, even though, they're no longer positive. And our fear is the same. Like, we want to be very mindful of our students, of our community. Any individual who tests positive, it's not necessarily their fault. This is a virus that is going around. We'll do the best that we can to mitigate those factors, but we really don't want individuals to be shamed and labeled and stigmatized because of COVID. So we'll do everything that we can to protect the privacy of those individuals. If they choose to share that out with others, that's their choice. If we become privy to that information, I feel like we should respect their privacy. That's their information, not ours to share.
Question back here.
Hi, Stephanie Peterson, President of East Midville. On the lines of communication, as we go into this groundwork, I know our school specifically will not be having in-person
on what communication means that we can use. I know that with the teachers, they had to use specific applications in order to communicate with the students, and I wasn't sure what limitations are on PTA communications within our membership or how we communicate to parents.
I'm going to talk during your president's training about communication tools in Canyons District and how to use those, so that may answer specific, are you asking specific to COVID and health related or just general PTA communications?
General.
Okay, I'll talk about that later on in the president's training.
Great, thank you.
I think too, just to comment on that, one of the things that we've discussed is that hopefully, you know, this is just me talking, but within a couple of weeks after starting school, that those in-person meetings can start to, you know, take place more and more, and we've encouraged our principals to do that. One of the elements, if you caught board meeting, is that we talked about just how essential you all are, and just how important a role that you play. So I just keep that dialogue going with your principal about what role, you know, you can continue to play. But you know, our kids, they need us, you know, back to engage them and to build those relationships, like I said, more than ever. So continue to you know, make that engagement and that collaboration happen. That's awesome. There's questions over here.
In our school plans, they said that masks would be provided for the students, and I don't know if it's the same in all the schools in the district. How will they be provided? Will they be disposable masks or fabric masks? And if so, is the school purchasing those? Is someone making those?
So the state has issued a state mask, and it's double layered cloth mask, and we'll have 2 of those for every student in the district and 2 of those for every employee in the district. So we're very grateful for that. I'm also aware, it's in the thousands. Two cloth masks, yep, for students, and 2 for employees. So.
Do they get those on like the first day of school, or?
Well, that's the demand right now on the supply chain is, as you can imagine, is extraordinarily tight. But hopefully, with this little bit of delay, that will really help that. So I know our purchasing department is full speed ahead to try to make that happen. But also, we do have present, if by chance we don't have those masks on the ready, there will be disposable masks at each school. The students that don't have any masks will be able to provide those. So, great.
Cloth masks that you're providing, I assume that for the elementary school kids, they'll be the kid-sized ones.
Yes.
The ones that I got from the state were like huge on my second graders.
Good point. I did mention that to Leon, and I said, you know, the adult mask isn't going to work for a kindergartner, so it might suffocate them more than anything. So, yeah.
Yeah, they are providing the kid sizes, though we know some students will need adult sizes.
Right.
So we'll just have them ready.
Andrew, I think you had a question.
Yeah, I'm Andrew Earl with Central Elementary Council, and my question was, how are you going to handle recess, basically? So someone tests positive, they've been playing recess, of course, you don't have to wear masks when you're out playing recess, and at our school, there's 2 grades in recess. Sorry, not 2 grades, 2 classes, 1 grade in recess. How are you going to manage the contact tracing for that?
So we'll just go back to that definition of 6 feet and 15 minutes. If a student does test positive and we're doing our contact tracing and we ask, you know, who were you close to? If it's outside and it's less than that 15 minutes and it's not within 6 feet that whole time, there will not be anybody that's identified as a close contact. It's better because it's outside, there's more air, more circulation. There's a lot less risk in that environment than in the classroom.
Alicia Falk, Silver Mesa. I've had a couple of parents ask if the face shields are okay for like kids with glasses, or for whatever reason, are shields going to be okay to use?
Yes, face shields are approved. Just know that The best option is the face covering and the shield. The second best is just a cloth face covering, and then the third option, lower option, is the face shield. It does need a wrap, and it needs to go below the chin.
Okay.
And with our face coverings, like the masks, they're just asking us to not have the filters in the masks, because then that allows the droplets to go beyond the mask. So.
Brandy Snyder, President of Standing Elementary. What happens when schools close? Like, if that happens, like we go to Orange and everybody has to go home and learn, are we just going to be transferred to online learning with the kids' teachers that they currently have? Or is it going to be a whole different?
We would move to online, and they would stay with their teacher. So I think one of the important things in this conversation and in this instance is that hopefully we learned a lot from what happened in the spring. It's no indictment on anyone. I think, as I've said this before, I've never been prouder to be an educator and a parent in March of 2020. I don't think we can fully understand the impact of the trauma that occurred to all of us. But hopefully we've learned a lot from that, right? And so going forward, what I would see, and I think you'll see this, those of you that have children that are going to start out online, is the expectations and how we engage our students online will look different. One thing that we learned and we know is that creating a culture of community online is extremely important for our kids, right? So along with their academic needs, if you're online in the elementary schools, we want our students to have at least an hour a day that their live connection with video with their teacher, as well as office hours that parents can communicate. And so, and also with asynchronous video instruction. That's for the online part. So if we were to move into red or orange because of a school closure, my hope and goal would be that we really ramp up what that engagement looks like. And I think, in our plan, one of the things that I think the board, really, especially with Nancy's leadership and me being new, is that, we really felt like it was important to keep that connection with their local neighborhood school. And I think that's something that is that's kind of something that really is an attribute to Canyon School District, is that connection to their neighborhood, your connection to your neighborhood school. And so we would want to keep our students as close to their teachers as possible in that transition for all these reasons that we're talking about.
And Superintendent, can I just
Yes.
ask you to also speak to the flexibility that's built within the options?
Yes, so
on an individual basis?
yeah, so some of the within the three options, right? So you have in person, and then you have online, and then you have parent guided. But within that, and I know some of you have already explored these options that are built within the in-person option. One of the things that the state did this year is they removed the 990-hour seat time hour requirement. And that's very important, right? Because I think for all of us, our messaging needs to be that we want to de-incentivize kids coming to school sick, right? And if they feel the pressure to be to school and they're sick or they're ill, then obviously we raise the risk for everybody else. And so 990 rule that requires 990 seat time hours was suspended. And then with that, that gives you as parents great flexibility within that in-person option to choose whether maybe your student is feeling ill, or maybe as a parent you just decide, hey, you know what, with my fear level this week, I'm feeling like, I prefer my student be there Monday and Wednesday, or maybe Thursday, Friday, and the other days they're at home. The beauty in that is that if they do that on the Canvas side, then they should be able to stay at pace with their class. Now, having said that, I want to clarify that the Canvas page for in-person instruction is not the same as online. It's not going to be look the same because remember that teacher's teaching every day to students live each day, where the teacher that's online has a little more flexibility in their time and their hours. However, hopefully our Canvas pages are built to a place that our students can stay right with their class. Those pacing guides and those maps run parallel, so there's that great flexibility in moving back and forth. The second option, online, especially for secondary kids, if they choose online, it doesn't have to be 100% online. I know many of you have already selected, I'd prefer to have my student online for a few core classes, but I really want them to be at school for maybe an elective that isn't likely going to be online, or one that you feel like they need to be at school in person for. And so if you choose that option, that just requires you to go a little bit deeper into the system and communicate with a counselor at your school. But there is tremendous flexibility across all of those spectrums. Now, I mean, for me too, I would advocate in person. I think, that's part of, I mentioned this at board meeting, engaging our kids the best that we can in person is the ideal. But I think as we, pay close attention to all of this information, these data points, to make the best decisions that we can, for our families and our kids. So, question?
Just going along with what you just said, I guess I need to talk about it. I noticed when I was